For several years, I've served on the editorial board for the large monographic series we call the Moths in North America. Fondly, we refer to it as MONA. And the primary goal of MONA is to research in systematics and biology of the nearly 11,000 species of moths in the United States and Canada. It's a big goal. Thus far, we have approximately 28 volumes published in this series. As part of this series, one of the families that I've been researching is the Gracillariidae, which comprises the largest family of plant mining Lepidoptera. Currently, there are about 280 species in North America, and my colleague Dave Wagner, University of Connecticut, will be proposing about 40 new taxa. Here's an overview of the superfamily classification of Lepidoptera. I'm only showing this to show you approximately where the Gracillariidae fit into this phylogeny. You'll see they're near the base of this group called Ditrizia. It's the most recently evolved and the largest clade in the Lepidoptera. About 98% of all the Lepidoptera living today fall within the Ditrizia. And many of the species are of great economic importance, both as plant pests and also as biocontrol agents against invasive plants on a global scale. And shown here is the distribution of the citrus leaf miner, a Gracillariid whose old world distribution suddenly expanded in 1993 into the New World. It's now a pest throughout the citrus growing regions all over the place. Invasive species in general cost the U.S. taxpayer about $120 billion a year. So this is a very serious concern to every nation around. The adults can be very small, but when you have thousands of larvae on one tree, you can, these things can pack a real punch. As I told someone just a while ago, I said, this is some from my backyard here, and this is why I hate leaf miners. The larval biology of Gracillariidae is very especially interesting because the larval development is hypermetamorphic. That is to say, there exists a progression of body forms and feeding behaviors from an initial sap feeding stage, which is shown here by these little serpentine mines. And then the development changes and the feeding behavior changes, and they start forming blotches, which can cover most of the leaf. Many of the Gracillariids also mine the stems of various plants, like this one here on oleander. And also other genera actually will mine the outer rind of various fruits. I don't think any of you would want to buy a fruit like this in the store, so this is also a problem. An interesting feature about studying leaf mining insects is that the evidence of their diagnostic biology can often remain long after the insect has departed, in some cases as 101 million years, as you see here on the right. It's fossil leaf of a Laurales. To the right actually represents the oldest fossil remain of a Ditrizian moth that we can identify to any degree. Conrad Lavandera was a senior author on a report we did on leaf miners from this mid-Cretaceous deposit, and we found a few others we could identify too. Interestingly, this mine was very similar to one which I had just reared from Drimys winteri in Chile. In fact, the mine morphology was almost identical. Now this diagram here shows and summarizes actually the larval development that we found in some of the genera. Because the larval development is so important to the systematics and important to understanding the relationships of the family, we are emphasizing the biology in our monograph. Over the years, we have reared about 2/3 of the over 300 species of Gracillariids in North America. And we've also documented over 100 species, their entire life cycle, including counting all the instars and what these various instars do. Each one of those little boxes there represents an instar. And it also summarizes what kind of feeding morph is in that particular instar. In closing, I'd like to just run over a few of these morphs. This is one species, the larva, and this is the sap-feeding stage, the early sap-feeding stages. There can be as many as 8 sap-feeding instars. You'll notice the head is very flat, and the mandibles work like scissors. They do not masticate their food. They simply slash open a cell and suck in the contents. This is a very strange instar. It's non-feeding, has no mouth parts, no legs. We call it a ghost instar or a transitional stage. And when it molts, it changes into the last instar, which is a tissue feeder with opposable mandibles which masticate their food. And it's also the instar that spins the cocoon, and the larva will pupate inside that cocoon.
Okay.
Yo.
So when they are mining the rind of a fruit, do they damage the fruit itself, or is this just
No.
American consumers being squeezed?
You could use, yes, does this rind miner in some of these fruits, does it damage the fruit? In other words, could you eat the fruit? Of course, yes, you could. And often when they, in the citrus industry, when they have these outbreaks of the peel miner, they call it the citrus peel miner, they will use the fruit for juice. They can't sell it in the market, so they'll use it for juice. The one I showed you on melon is still an unreared species. It's a new species, but I can't get anyone to rear it in California. They're not all that common. They're very hard to rear. The stem miners and the rind miners are the most difficult ones to rear.